Welcome to another edition of Show Up Central Oregon. Thank you. I need to put that down so it's not in front of my face. Thank you for thank you for joining us. Gosh, it's been a long day. I am privileged right now to be joined by a gentleman by the name of Preston Caldecott. Preston, how are you, sir?
Alive and well.
Alive and well. That's indeed what we are today. And Preston, can you give us a little background on who you are and what it is that you do?
God, that sounds like an existential question.
Especially on a week like this, for sure.
Sure. Well, in my role as the business guy, I'm the CEO of Five Talent Software, which is a custom application development company here in town. You probably have seen this logo around on our trucks. And other than that, what my real role is dad to twins, Dakota and Jenna, and husband to my better three quarters, Chelsea Calica.
Yes, Chelsea joined us yesterday, so there was a mention of the kids and you and everything yesterday. So it's kind of fun to have you on today for sure. Um,
Sure, definitely my role to always follow Chelsea, not to lead. Yeah.
exactly, as good spouses honestly can know. So let me get into a few things. Obviously, you play a very large role, not just in the company that you're in, but you also have some strong connections with some great organizations. One of them is Opportunity Knocks. Can you talk about kind of why you choose to support organizations like Opportunity Knocks, and maybe even from a standpoint of today, why it's even more important to be looking at organizations like this?
Sure. Well, to start off with, my civic engagement, which I'm embarrassed to say, didn't start until just about 7, 8 years ago. And before then, I wasn't really that civically active. I was a startup guy and heads down, working 80, 100-hour weeks. And the idea of nonprofits and government groups, et cetera, was just totally out of my wheelhouse. I was the typical business guy until I ended up with some issues with hiring some very high end talent. And they came to me after 2 weeks in a hotel. One specific guy had his wife and a newborn in a hotel room and said, "Hey, I can't find a place to live." And honestly, I was totally shocked. I had no idea. And I started calling real estate friends shortly after. But I basically said, "Please stay. Chelsea and I are going to take a vacation impromptu and stay at McMenamins, move into our house, and I'm going to find you a place to live." And when I called the realtors and found out, oh my God, what's going on? That a person making that kind of money couldn't find a home was quite a shock. And then shortly after, taking care of that, and we found them a home in Redmond. But that really spurred on this civic vibe that really started with I almost would say anger at the circumstance. I had
Yeah.
no clue that we couldn't get reasonable homes, even rentals for our new employees. And that's when I got civically engaged. And once I opened that Pandora's box, it was all these other agencies that I saw that needed help, and it literally just hands to show up and a brain to join the others to solve some small and big issues
Hmm.
in town. And so that's what really started my civic side. And Opportunity Knox was one of those, which recognizing that there's a lot of folks that needed advice and not enough silver-haired folks to provide it. So peer-to-peer kind of support is really what Opportunity Knox stands for the most part, is gather a bunch of CEOs and share war stories and how to solve problems
Mm.
with a facilitator who knows how to carry the conversation forward instead of getting lost in the weeds.
Hmm.
And so I joined a group. That's how I started years and years ago. And was that 2012 is when I started in a group with Opportunity Knox, I believe.
Mm.
Um, but more to consume the service than to provide a service,
Right.
right? And then
Right.
after the experience of getting civically engaged, I decided to really up my game in that organization by becoming a facilitator. And then after that, I was so impressed with people were doing in the different groups, that I joined the board and have been actively assisting on growing the organization since then.
Why do you think right now, Preston? I mean, obviously we're at some difficult times, and I don't know that a lot of mentors or a lot of people have been through this, but why do you think it's really extremely important for those people to kind of come out of the woodwork that have been through situations like this and stand up to help business owners? Can you give some insight on what your thoughts are on that?
Well, I think there's company in misery, right? It's the idea of we're all suffering through the same problems,
Right.
and part of it is just knowing someone else is experiencing problems too, sort of lightens your load.
Mm-hmm.
And then additionally is that oftentimes you've already stumbled across the 5 or 6 errors to find the thing that works, and it helps short circuit for the next person, to get to the solution much faster. And and so even though they may be in different organizations or different kinds of companies, many of the issues are the same, whether it's HR or finance and things like that. So it's having shared wisdom among the group, but it's also sharing the problem, right? Having a group carry the burden for someone.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, for CEOs, we always say CEOs is the loneliest job on the planet, and sharing that with a group of other CEOs, it's a place to talk about things you normally can't talk to or talk with your employees or peers in a company.
All right.
So it provides that outlet. It's a point of sanity, staying sane in the roles, whether it's CEO, CFO, head of marketing, whatever it may be, and then also getting some issues solved by asking the group to provide input or maybe outside resources, which we do a lot. In our OK29 group, which I'm a facilitator in, we've had a lot of exits in OK29 and OK15, which I'm a member of. And so we brought in someone named Greg Sachikoli, who has a company called Coachwell, to talk about exit strategies for small and medium businesses and different kinds of exits, whether it's exit by death or succession or sale or major investment, and the different options and pros and cons about it. So that's the kind of thing that you can actually access outside resources and bring them in when normally that resource might charge to participate on a one-on-one basis.
Yeah, I think that's and the reality is that individuals like you have been through so many things that for business owners that haven't been through it so long, you look at a problem and say, well, why haven't you considered this? And they're locked up in it so hard that they just needed to go up to the 50,000 foot level and go, okay, but when you're running a business, too much of the time you're running in the business versus running on the business. And I think that's what mentorship can definitely do too, is just allow that ability to see the bigger picture, and individuals like yourself can be, hey, this is, you can get through this.
In some cases, OK29 is a lot of very fast growing companies with CEOs who have not been through a growth of a company before. This is their first time out of the gate. So there's a lot more mentoring that happens in that group because there's a lot of first time experiences. They really can't share, how to solve problems because they're all experiencing it for the first time. So in OK15 is an example of really a true facilitation group with a lot of seasoned CEOs sharing, issues on scale. And it's extremely helpful. And that is really true facilitation of a group versus mentoring.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about some of these big picture items for a quick second. Obviously, today is a different time for individuals. I'm sure your business is running slightly different than it was, 2 weeks ago. Have you seen any sort of creative solutions being implemented by, businesses that are in your industry or other businesses that you're like, that's what we need to think about as a small business?
Well, definitely. I mean, as a Five Talent is a custom application development company. We're a tech company. So this hasn't affected us structurally because we already operate in a fashion that allows us to easily work from home
Right.
and have little to no disruption. Our teams understand how to work and use the tools at hand to collaborate and to get things done. Our clients are used to this format. Most of our clients are outside the state of Oregon, so we do most of our communication through this kind of tool anyway. What I've seen a lot of creative solutions going on with other companies when it comes to more the product side. How do you solve supply chain? How do you solve sales and stuff?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a tough problem to solve right now. Most companies are suffering. I just saw something posted, was it New York Times, and 96% of companies in the United States are already experiencing the effects of the coronavirus hit.
Mm.
It's not trivial. And we've had a few
Mm-hmm.
clients who are in the retail space that have notified us that we're going to put things on hold. Luckily, we have a pipeline way beyond our ability to consume, so it's easy for us to drag down more work. We're
Mm-hmm.
actually hiring 3 more people next week, so we're lucky enough to be in a business that allows that. But most of my friends are in the total opposite situation, laying off all employees or skeleton crews only. So, but the creative solution seems to be on how do you stay in business in the retail sector without clients flying or customers, flying through the doors. You've got to go to the customer. So, delivery services. I saw a post that was made in jest, but actually sounds smart. It's like someone said, "Hey, taco trucks, food trucks, can you do neighborhood runs?"
Right. Yeah.
And hey, that's not a bad idea. Why don't we just have like all the food trucks do a constant circle in all the neighborhoods at the meal times and provide food? It's brilliant. It's simple. The city may not be happy with it, but I'm sure running out and buying a burrito is a lot better than going and traipsing out in public when you shouldn't be.
Right. Yeah. I actually ran across the owner of Q actually last night, and I was not. I needed to go to Costco because I needed to get some things. So I had a legitimate excuse, but he was telling me about a service that had just started that was basically a ordering fulfillment for food trucks where you could have a group of people order and then all the individual food trucks come out basically at that point in time. So it's a really sort of, in this case, you pull up, you say you're there, and everybody comes out. It was, the whole principle was is the ability to order from multiple food trucks and split the bill. But in this modern case, it's sort of like, well, it's a delivery app at that point in time. You pull up and they deliver to you. So it's just interesting to see how even an old sort of a old model can apply to a new model.
Sure.
Yeah, and if you, I mean, obviously your business is different, but other than the food trucks, has there been any other kind of interesting? You're like, oh gosh, that's just so brilliant.
Well, I wish I had a lot of these on the top of mind. I've been focused on making sure projects get delivered with 5 talent and keeping clients happy. But as far as Bella Taza is looking at a model to deliver coffee, which really isn't being done, right? I mean, how do you
Right.
deliver coffee in a hot steaming cup? It's a trivial problem, but a real world,
Mm-hmm.
problem. As far as remote delivery. So people are trying to figure this out. Supply chain is interesting. How do you keep certain goods flowing?
Mm-hmm.
And factories. There are factories that are actually scaling up dramatically because of demand. Typically, for anything that's in the food stuff sector, right,
Yeah.
and toilet paper and all the essentials. Grace Bio, Lisa Hale, a good friend of
Yes.
mine,
Yep.
CEO, who decided to create hand sanitizer, which is in short supply. And several folks, I forget the distillery, that's doing the same thing in town and giving it out free. And Gale is providing in bulk, so it's not free, but it's definitely at cost. So, people are coming up with creative
Mm-hmm.
solutions to retarget their facilities to create things that are necessary to fight the virus, not necessarily in their line of business.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's great. We're all about positivity here, and I heard this morning that you've got, well, I mean, a natural that's being successful right now is Medline in Redmond. That makes a lot of sense. Those who don't know, Medline is a larger medical device manufacturer. But we also, I've heard that Metabolic and Sisters, and then also Laird Superfoods is also actually, in fact, I think it was, who is it? Laird. Yeah, Laird is actually hiring right now because they need people. So, again, this sort of thing has changed our economy to things that you might not think are expanding are actually expanding. So,
And several manufacturers are retooling to provide respirators.
mm-hmm.
I think if I read right, of course I've read 1,000 of these, but I think Tesla is a good example of one of those that's looking at cranking out needed equipment such as respirators.
Yeah, and it's very interesting for me how things have sort of shifted and changed. And I heard, I mean, obviously, if anybody has tried to order on Amazon the other day or in the last few days, I placed an order on some gear as I continue to do this. I'm like, okay, it would be good if we streamline and do this a little bit better. I'm not getting it until next Wednesday now. So they're saying that people that need urgent supplies are prioritizing over these less urgent. And I did see in the LA Times that they were expected to hire 100,000 new workers too, which is crazy to think about how our economy has now shifted so far online, which is, I mean, obviously why you're in business.
Sure.
Which along that same line, you know, as you are, making sure that you're, ahead of whatever needs to happen, what resources, what are the biggest kind of resources that you're utilizing right now to make sure that you're, ahead of this?
Well, we're definitely utilizing video chats and remote technologies. A long time ago, we set up a unique environment which many have followed since, but all of our workspaces, what typically people experience on their desktop, and most people work on their laptop or desktop, and it resides on your laptop or desktop. We went to something called Workspaces. We chose Amazon Web Services since we utilize that cloud quite a bit. It's our major deployment cloud for our clients. So they have Workspaces, which allows all of our employees to utilize the resources there, and then all that they're seeing on their screen is just basically a window into that remote desktop, if you
Mm-hmm,
will.
mm-hmm, yeah.
And so it's all there. They can scale and use their software, and then if their laptop dies or is stolen, or in the absolute worst case, one of our employees goes rogue, we can instantaneously turn it off remotely, and one of our employees can be outfitted with another laptop. It doesn't have to be a very strong one. It can be a very simple laptop like a Chromebook or something, and up pops their entire workspace and the beefy technology behind it, so they can run software or animation, whatever it might be, in the cloud. So that's something that helped us out tremendously. We can ship folks to their homes and have them work on their desk there, and it doesn't take a lot of bandwidth to pull up that entire workspace that resides in Amazon. So that's one of the tools that we used pretty heavily, and then of course the voice and the video.
Have you heard from your employees? Have they mentioned? I mean, obviously with the video conferencing, it's for me, it's a way at least to you can see eye to eye, and it's at least gives you an opportunity to see that. But have any of them expressed the missing connection piece, like the more of the human, not necessarily physical, but being in proximity, I guess, more than anything else?
Oh yeah, as a matter of fact, we had our all hands lunch and learn, which we normally have on Fridays, where we serve up food in all our offices. We're currently in 3 locations, and everyone's participating remotely. Well, I shouldn't say that. Our remote offices are participating along with our staff here. We just had our first all hands remote lunch and learn today, where it looked like the Brady Bunch up on the
Oh
screen.
yeah, yeah.
Lots of people showing up on the screen. And it was fine. The things that people are sharing is, the same for us is we're all stir crazy. It's great to work from home for a while, but to be there 24/7
Right.
requires some sanity checks, like taking a walk or other things. They're good at communicating through Slack and video chats one on one. They're used to it, but they come into the office for connection. To
Mm-hmm.
have a game of pool that we have a pool table in or something, or just to chat over lunch or something. And that is definitely missing. You can only do so much remotely.
Yeah, and I'm reminded by an interesting thing, and you could weigh in on this because I actually this is a discussion point for I think for both of us here. I know that we spend I forget what is it 80% of our life working or something. So we're actually spending more time at work than we do at home. In some respects, we're working at home now, so I guess I'm trying to figure out. Okay, does that? I mean, actually, this is an interesting question. Productivity. Do you think that it's? I mean, this has always been the question of okay, working from home, is that more productive, less productivity? What I'm curious what you have seen from a business owner standpoint.
Well, it's been an issue for us for a long time. This is the third consultancy I've spun up, and at every consultancy, including I was a management consultant services for Price Waterhouse years and years ago. The issue of productivity, anyone that was remote was always factored down as far as productivity, and it still exists today. I mean, a good example is when you have a team, we have what we call SEAL teams basically wrapped around a project, right? Everyone that has their special expertise. And that shoulder to shoulder, leaning over to each other and having real time communication, having a screen that you need to pop up and communicate, even though it's easy, is a barrier.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's is less likely to connect and try to solve the problem on their own. And we have a rule here that if you sink more than a certain percentage of the project time for that task, let's say it's 10 hours and you've sunk an hour or two, you better call someone.
Mm-hmm.
You better reach out because we can't afford to waste client time and money on solving a problem when someone that you reach might have it in 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So part of our ability to deliver is because we do have most of our folks working shoulder to shoulder.
Right.
And so that's not going to change it, especially when, and this is not meant as a knock, most software developers are introverts. And so there's already a barrier to reach out to someone.
Right.
We found by putting them in close proximity, that barrier is broken down. We actually have stand-up desks and stand-up stools, so that minimizes the inertia to get out of a chair and go talk to someone.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that applies for everyone. We can't expect to have 100% productivity as we would having people in the office. So we lower our expectations, but we provide all the tools possible and try to incentivize them to still reach out, even though it's through Slack and not leaning over a desk or something, to ask someone for help.
I think you mentioned something about managing expectations, and I think that's a good thing to remind business owners and the fact that you don't want to be expecting the same workload right now because there's a lot of other mental, emotional things going on, especially. So as good business owners, we sort of need to lean in and say, well, here's my expectations of what it is. I mean, I think too often we forget to set those expectations. And so for you folks, how are you setting those expectations? I mean, obviously this is not necessarily a new scenario for you, but maybe give some insight on how you are setting those expectations.
Sure. Well, there is a gain in productivity because we don't have people commuting. So there's that, right? Mm-hmm. So there is an extra half hour or 20 minutes for someone on either end of the commute. So we can add that back in. And then, we actually see that people are working longer at home without breaks than they would naturally have at the office. So there's a plus and a minus. Mm-hmm. Most of our folks I would consider very high on the work ethic scale, if not all of them. So it's making sure they take the breaks they should that they normally would in the office.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to get absorbed into our work specifically because it's so mentally focused. And so we have to remind them to take breaks. So that's part of the process is I think a lot of jobs that are natural work from home kind of jobs are very mental. And the discipline of making the breaks to keep the level of ability of focus
Mm-hmm.
on the task.
Yeah, I have been a practitioner over the years of the Pomodoro method, which I don't know if you've ever been familiar, but it's the fact that you need to do 20 minutes and then take a break, 20 minutes, and because your brain doesn't necessarily work past a certain point, and you actually reduce your productivity. So, do you need to take? Are you?
Sorry, I'm waving at someone at the door. A CEO's job is never done.
I know, exactly. Um, let me kind of pivot this to the future here. If I were to ask you to put your Swami hat on, as the practitioner and knowledge of all of the future, and to see into the future, what do you think, or what do you feel the biggest permanent change is going to kind of result out of this? I mean, if you were to see some trends that you're seeing already, and what do you think that's going to look like?
Gosh, well, I've seen a lot of posts about how we work and live is going to change forever. I don't know if that's true. I think our nature is to go back to what we're comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Maybe some people in other industries will find a way to work from home more often. Yeah, there's that. Maybe people will find that working 80, 100-hour weeks uh, isn't a balanced life when your life is at stake.
Right.
I think that's at the core of what's here is death has become a reality for some who never thought about it.
Yeah.
It's a reality for all of us. Is when we exit is the question, but having the exit so close and real, I think people are going to take a pause on what is meaningful in one's life. I think that's what's really at core here. So we're going to really evaluate. Jesus, I need to go smell the roses, go spend time with the kids and the wife when we're not sheltering in place,
Mm-hmm.
and have more quality time.
Right.
And that reality is hitting home for a lot of folks, especially the people who thought they would live forever, anyone under 30, right? who,
Yeah.
who they don't even, it's not even on their scope. Why do I need a 401k?
Right. Right.
It's the realities are going to come to roost. And I think it's going to factor in their future employment decisions. I do believe the economy is going to come roaring back after this. The demand is still there. The things we want to accomplish is still there. But maybe the focus is going to change to things that are more meaningful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's actually a good outlook, because I think what we are realizing is those personal connections and those ability to just say, hey, do I do I need to be doing this, or should I be connecting on a more personal level? Should I be a person as opposed to automaton or something? I would agree with you on that. Also, that is an interesting point though on the can we work from remote locations, because I think the technology is essentially showing us, well, yeah, we could, but we just never had to. So I think that's an interesting point for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things about the technology, we've stressed the heck out of video conferencing, and other than a few major glitches that occurred early on when everyone's trying to scale up, it's proving to be fairly stable considering everything.
Mm-hmm.
And the more people who shelter in place, the cloud-based technologies are, for the most part, matching to demand. So that's the good news is we do have technology that can scale even in this kind of environment. And we'll see as more and more states force people to stay home and we have deserted streets. The confidence that I have now that technology can provide communication ability for folks means that, one, what they promise is going to work. Two, we're not going to be as isolated as people think because we have the opportunity to communicate. Uh, and three, that long term, it's a viable solution for more
Mm,
people.
hmm hmm Yeah, I mean, technology. I mean, I'm seriously embracing it from here. I mean, this is a you're on Zoom calling me, so I mean, this is it's the reality of what we're able to do with technology today. Um, I guess this is we've probably talked a little bit about this, but what would you say going forward to small business, medium sized business, whatever that looks like? Those people that are really, I guess, scared, for lack of a better term. What would you say to them? What would that be? That sort of that biggest piece of advice you would give them?
Well, definitely what's coming to roost is we need more reserves, right? Most businesses operate hand to mouth, and part of it by design, right? There's real time inventory, um, uh, which works in an economy that doesn't have disruption. But here's the biggest disruption in our lifetime, um, and and I think that we need to really look at, well, geez, the fundamentals. Maybe we need more cash in the business, right? We need to operate on EBITDA more than before. Well, for those who don't know EBITDA, the profit, the net profit,
Right.
we
Yeah.
have more of that in the business. We're a growing business, and we have not focused on EBITDA, but we definitely had cash reserves,
Mm-hmm.
which
Mm-hmm.
is our savings grace, and we have a line of credit that we can tap when necessary. So we put the tools in place for those contingencies because we're a consulting company. We're project based. We're not a recurring revenue stream like selling a service that you pay a monthly fee for, right?
Right.
So we already had those instruments in place that allows us to ride the storm. Who knows for how long though, right? It's wise to have that cushion. It's hard to get in place. So maybe we'll see the American public willing to pay more money for things to provide the profit necessary for companies and individuals to have more cushion.
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
also means we're going to look at not buying as many things as we thought and saving more
Mm-hmm.
to build up cushion.
Right. I think one of the biggest takeaways I'm also hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that if you've never looked at your P&L, it's a good time to look at your P&L.
Yeah, a good friend of mine, Jim Shell, who was the founder of Opportunity Knox and a dear friend. He's like my older brother. Um, he has always preached that the every CEO needs to know the P&L in and out, and to focus on it as part of your daily practice
Mm-hmm.
running a business.
Right. Yeah. So I got some rapid fire questions. So don't think too much at these. Okay. These are things that we just ask all our guests. Favorite book, movie, or song, and why?
Oh my gosh. Favorite book would be Lord of the Rings. I've
Oh.
read it through probably 7 times, the entire series. I just love the world it creates, and that tends to be the kind of things I love is deep immersion with lots of books that keep that whole universe alive in my mind.
Right.
Best movie, man, that's a tough one. I love epics. So the family favorite I can say is Sound of Music,
Oh.
which the living room breaks out in everyone singing every song. We played that movie so many times a year for as long as I can remember. That it's a family event, right? Every time. Other favorites, gosh, too many, way too many. The epics, Lawrence of Arabia, anything that's an epic, long kind of
Uh-huh.
deep dive. Westworld, because it's a
Oh,
deep
interesting.
dive
Yeah. Uh-huh.
over a period of time. So,
Okay. All right. Okay. So, uh, best creative solution to a problem. And this can either be your best creative solution to a problem or one that you've seen that you'd love to share.
to think out of the box. I think most people look at, in matter of fact, most business advisors promote solve a problem. I love to create something that has no problems associated with it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So solving a problem means it's existing ways of doing things and existing technologies deployed, and you're piecing it together and coming to a solution. That's great. Lots of business plans work against that. But I love the idea of creating something that no one's ever thought of before, and therefore we don't even know what the problems are yet.
Mm-hmm.
What would be a good example? I think Steve Jobs did that with the iPhone. It created a platform that no one conceived of except for Star Trek with the communicator,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It was science fiction that became science fact. And that to me was a solution that had no real problem that mapped to it. It created a whole set of problems afterwards, like bandwidth
Yeah.
and applications that need to get deployed on it, and on and on. But it really was a out of left field, no one thought to that level of a solution.
So this is a tough one that when I asked Afton this one, she this one kind of threw her for a loop. So what is your well, let me rephrase this. Who or what is your creative muse?
Creative Muse, wow. Um, well, I would say that I look at three people that have influenced my idea of innovation and creativity, and that's uh, you know Elon Musk,
Hmm.
uh, Branson of
Yeah.
Virgin,
Yep.
right, and
Yeah.
then another hero of mine is Nikola Tesla,
Oh yeah. Okay.
which I've studied for a long time, and to me, they're the ones that thought of things no one thought of before, that everyone thought was impossible, and made them real.
Right.
And of course, the problem with that is the truly innovative, the entire industries that sit in the old 30, 50, 100-year-old technologies rail against them. They're the evil ones. They're
Mm-hmm.
destroying everything. And yet, they transform and change things. Steve Jobs, I put him on that short
Yeah.
list.
Well, and Tesla's a good one with that as far as people came after him for his ideas. I mean, he had some brilliant ideas. I think later in life he turned into a bit of an eccentric, and I'm sure you've probably studied him more than I have. But yeah, he is definitely one of those that had some amazing ideas that was in the.
Yeah, and the one technology that lots of people are thinking about, and honestly, I've been thinking about since 1890 something, is quantum physics and quantum mechanics. It's one of those things that we have no idea the ramifications of creating this new way of computing, this new way of communicating, this new way of seeing the universe. Actually, to be factual in quantum mechanics, infinite universes.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the implications of the change in society rivals anything that's ever occurred in the history of mankind.
Right.
And yet it's so hard to grasp, even for those who are deeply in it, spending 12 hours a day and their entire careers wrapped around it, and it's still filled with unknowns and surprises.
Yeah. Yeah. Preston, I appreciate you taking the time. I've been asking this a lot of everybody too, and because I'm just curious and I think it's great to share. What are you doing for your mental health right now?
Uh, well, I definitely, mental health for me is to keep my mind busy. I don't like idle time, and I don't perform very well. The more idle time I have, the less productive I am
Hmm.
in the time that I apply towards work. So I've always been the one that needs to keep my mind busy. And so I write articles for magazines when I have idle time at night or on weekends or 3 o'clock in the morning when I wake up a lot of times. I write articles to keep my mind, active. And honestly, I think that practice is going to help me when I get old. I won't mention my age now. Some people would call me old now, but I think keeping my mind active is what I do to occupy my time to stay sane.
Thank you. Do you have anything else you want to share, or at this point in time, obviously a different world, but have you been thinking about anything you would love to share?
Yeah, believe scientists and not politicians.
We're not trying to run a political show, but you can judge by my reaction with that laughing. That's how I feel as well. Hey, Preston, I appreciate you taking the time very much this afternoon and speaking with us. And best of luck in this difficult time. And if you have anything that you think about that you want to share, we're happy to have you back on, and I appreciate it.
Thanks, and I want to say thanks for doing this for the community. I think it's important, and the fact that you're devoting so much time and energy on having people inform and share with the community. That's great.
Well, I've said this many times. I'm a out of work video production guy because my business is events, and it just sort of disappeared. So I am humbled to be able to do this at this point in time. So yeah,
Good
yeah.
time.
Thank you, Preston. I appreciate it. You can go ahead and sign off. I appreciate it, and you have a great afternoon.
You do too. Take care.
So that was Preston Calicott of Five Talent. We're gonna probably sign off for today. Actually, I'm going to pop back on, start a stream immediately after this, so that this can be its own. So stand by, because there's going to be another one here very shortly. But yeah, thank you for joining us in that discussion with Preston. This weekend's going to be, I'm not sure yet. I'm going to try to see if I can drum up some actual entertaining programming for us. Less business, but more sort of entertainment if I can find some. So thank you for joining me, and have a wonderful evening.